7 of Diddy's trial, and his former assistant, David James, was back on the stand to testify. And let me tell you, he had the courtroom laughing during his cross-examination. Yesterday, he testified that he worked for Diddy from 2007 to 2009. And today, we found out exactly why he left. He said it had everything to do with that incident at the restaurant when Diddy found out that Suge Knight was there. That was revealed during his cross-examination, but let's go back to his testimony. James said that Diddy never stayed anywhere alone. Cassie was usually with him, and if she wasn't, there were other women. His favorite hotel was the Trump International, and he said that he would prep the rooms for him. There would be 30 to 40 pill bottles in the room, including, I hope I can say this stuff, Viagra, X, and Perc-O sets. He would also have pills that would increase his sperm count. Then you have this tweet, which is very misleading because if you read it alone, it makes it sound like Obama would go to Diddy's dealer to get substances. But what was really said is that Diddy would take X that had a former president's face on it, and when asked which former president, he said Obama. Now, he said Diddy never wanted this stuff on the record, which included condoms, baby oil, lube, so he would pay for it with his credit card, and then Diddy's security would pay him back in cash. Diddy's security team would carry around a Louis bag that had $10,000+ in cash. Remember in Cassie's testimony where she said in 2009, Diddy had hit her so bad that she had to hide in a hotel for about a week and a half? Remember, Cassie had said her mom called her saying she saw a blind item, but it didn't say any names, and she wanted to know if that was Cassie. But when Diddy found out about it, David James said he came home angry from the club and started accusing him of the blog post. Said he stormed in and looked at David's browsing history and said that's never happened before. He said a few days later, per Diddy's instructions, he went and delivered fried chicken to Cassie at the London hotel. When he got there, Cassie didn't answer the door, but a staffer did, and she was there for about a week. He said one time in Miami, Diddy was staying at a hotel and had asked him to bring his iPod from his house on Star Island. When he got to the hotel, he knocked, but no one answered, and he had the key because he had set the room up. And when he got in the room, Cassie was laying in the bed, but she wasn't moving. He said he saw another man in there who was about 5'8" with long hair, and he scurried away, but he also heard the shower and assumed Diddy was in there. He could be talking about the Punisher, but I guess we'll find out what happened that day when that escort testifies. It's about a time where Diddy's watch or bracelet went missing and said that Diddy's team came and searched his and his girlfriend's belongings. It didn't stop there because Diddy had him take a lie detector test, and the man that was doing the test said he was former FBI. He said it was very intimidating, but he didn't refuse because he wanted to keep his job. It happened again where Diddy's watch went missing and he had to take a lie detector test, and the gentleman said to him, "You seem nervous," and he said, "Yeah, I am." He even said that Capricorn Clark had to take a lie detector test to prove that she wasn't part of a jewelry heist. He also talked about Diddy's parties and said one time he was drinking, he took X, and Diddy often films these parties. He said Diddy was reviewing the film and said to him, "Hey, Playboy, was that you dancing around at the party?" I said yes, and he said, "I'm going to keep the video in case I ever need it." Talking about the incident at Mel's Diner with Suge Knight, he said that was the reason he quit his job. He and Diddy's security guard, D-Rock, were picking up food for Diddy, and that's when they saw Suge Knight at a diner. He said Diddy's security guy went up to Suge Knight and dapped him up, and that's when 4 black SUVs pulled up, and one of the guys handed Suge Knight a pew pew. He said he and D-Rock rushed back to Diddy's, and when Diddy was told that Suge Knight was at the diner, he was going, and Cassie was crying for him not to go. Diddy got back into the car with 3 weapons and ordered David to drive to the diner. He told the jury, "It was the first time I realized my life was in danger, and that was the moment that made him realize he needed to quit, and he gave a 6-month notice and left in 2009. Now, the defense was definitely trying to poke holes in his Suge Knight story and asked if he had been drinking or on anything that night. He said no, and said that even though he was working 20 hours a day until 4 a.m., his mind was as clear as it could be. Like I said, he did make the courtroom laugh. When he was asked, "Did you leave D-Rock at the diner?" he was smiling, and then the attorney said, "Why are you smiling?" And he said, "'Cause that's a crazy question. Why would I?" Mark Agnifilo asked again, "Didn't you leave D-Rock at the diner?" He said, "That makes no sense." I'm not asking what makes sense. I'm asking, did you? And he said, no. When asking about Diddy with the weapons, he said, "I didn't know we had weapons until then." And then Agnifilo said, "Have you ever been in a situation like that?" And he said, no. Agnifilo said to him, "You didn't tell Diddy I don't want to drive to Suge Knight's with weapons?" And he said, no. He made it clear. How do you say no to someone who's holding these weapons and they're standing right there next to you? Asked if he had immunity for testifying, he said he did have some kind of offer agreement. Was asked about going on different locations with Diddy, like Ibiza, London, Saint Tropez, and asked if they were vacations, and he said they were business oriented. Asked if he had met with high-level roster of people, he said, second understatement of the day. He talked about how Bad Boy was looked at as a family and said that Diddy's mom would sometimes call him her son. Agnifilo said what was the mission, and he said to make sure Diddy was happy. He was then asked about his relationship with Chef Jordan, who is going to be testifying. He was asked if he had choked her, and he said no. We were on Star Island. She told me where to take him. I grabbed her 2 wrists and I said, stay in your effing lane. Said it was reported to HQ and Diddy called him and told him, you can't be putting your hands on women. He told me to get her a gift. Once Cross was over, the prosecutor asked about Chef Jordan since it was brought up during Cross. David said that Diddy told him to file a report and say that Chef Jordan had been the aggressor, but I didn't file it. I drove around and told him I'd made the report. And Cross came back and said, you lied to Mr. Combs about filing the police report? And he said yes, and then Diddy's attorney said nothing further. Now on the stand is Cassie's mother, and I will be back with her testimony.